Login accepted.
Already 2 minutes gone. So now I hope you're not too tired. I'm going to talk about Jupyter Notebook versus classical IDE. You really have to choose. First, just a quick call. Who here has never used a notebook? Don't know what it is? Nobody, I think. OK, that's great. So I'm Victor Landeau. I'm a machine learning engineer. So you can check my Twitter or my GitHub if you want. Nowadays, I work at Equinox. So what is Equinox? In Equinox, we are trying to build high-performing teams. I mean, we're more like you don't need to just to hire great people. To be efficient, you really need to work as a team with common practices, common culture. So we spend a lot of time training about agile practices, about software craftsmanship, etc. And we have two main activities. We do data and AI services for companies in France. And we have what we call a startup factory. So we are building startups and new products. For example, you can check Mouvance. It's an app which helps you track your the impact on the environment of your mobility and help you reduce it. And you can check Pilotis, which is software to quickly bootstrap AI projects. So we're going to talk about how to use both your notebooks and your IDE in three main use cases. One is data exploration, machine learning exploration. One is when you already have a running software and you use notebooks just for monitoring, for repeating some analysis. And one is when you use notebook for educational purposes. So first, let's talk about notebooks as an exploratory tool. So let's say you work for a real estate company, and usually, so in data, oops, sorry, where it is. Sorry, there's, OK. Yes, it's OK. So usually in data, they like to give you some files, so some CSV file with a lot of data. If you want to explore it, well, you will not explore it like that. You will not know a lot of things just by opening it with your favorite tool, or by using, you can try to use Spark Shell, IPython to try to know what is inside, but it's not really great. So the best way to do this kind of things is to use notebooks. So you can just run Jupyter Notebook. You can install Jupyter Notebook. You can run Jupyter Notebook. And sorry, I don't see it really well here. I'll zoom it a bit. OK, and you will see it better also. So then you can get your favorite tool. So for example, Pandas. You can get a tool for plotting, so Plotly Express. And with that, you can open your data. You get auto-completion, and you can see what's inside. You can easily get it this way. You can filter on some rows, try to crunch it, and you can also plot it. So for example, what I said is that maybe the real estate, they want you to predict the price you should sell the house. So maybe you want to know the relation between the price and maybe the place where your house is. So maybe you want to plot that just to get a hint about that. So you can easily do that just like that, like this. And here you get a plot. Maybe you can make another plot, keep it, and explore your data, and then get to know how you have to process your data in order to do what the business wants you to do. Because if you don't know that, you will not know what you have to do. So you have really to explore the data. So in AI or even just in data engineering, it's an important step, just to explore the data, get to know what you have, to know how you have to do to get what you want to get. So you can do that like just for exploring the data or for trying new models on your data. In that way, your notebook is just a draft. You don't have to version it. You don't have to put it in Git. Maybe you're gonna do that just to keep it, to be sure to maybe to share it. But if it's just drafts, you will not keep it in the long way. So it's not really so important. And when you know what you want to do, you can get to your IDE, and we will see why just now. And then it's better to use your IDE to build your software. Why is it better? So let's say you want to you're building a real software, something you have to run automatically to be sure it's working, things like that. In order to do that, some people use notebooks. They build notebooks, they use tools such as Papermill or stuff from big companies like Netflix to run their notebook every day. But like it's kind of controversial. So there is this talk, you can find it in the internet. This guy is really arguing that notebooks is not a great tool for good software quality. There is this other guy from, sorry, I forgot the name from, yeah. So the guy, he said, no, in fact, you can use notebook to build great software quality. So let's try, let's see. Okay, what do I got? Okay, sorry, no, here. Come on. Okay, let's say, here I have a notebook. It's versioned with my code. But what is a notebook? A notebook is a big JSON file, which is interpreted by your browser and your Python library, your Jupyter library, to get this interactive code editor and stuff. And what's happening? When you're modifying a notebook, when you're just running a notebook, in fact, it will modify your big JSON file if you save it, in fact, because it's not saving it automatically. So here I saved it, and here normally, well, here it says, no, yes, it says I modified the notebook, but I didn't do anything, I just ran it again. But here it's the metadata. With your notebook, you have a lot of metadata. It's about, it's what you see here. They tell you the time you run each cell, the order you run each cell. So it's a lot of metadata you get with the notebook, and you will get it in your version file either way. And if you do some modification, for example, here I will just do something like that. No, doesn't matter. Well, I didn't save it, but it's not so important because anyway, it's hard to see which modification you did. Where is my 1+1? I don't know. It's a big file. Oh, it's here. But to do code reviews, it's not a great tool. If you want to modify your notebook, like if you're into like software craftsmanship, usually you want to be able to refactor your code as often as possible to get it clear, to get it easy to read, to get it like more modular, things like that. With your notebook, it's kind of hard. If you want to rename that, like invest path, invest name, well, if I want to rename it, I have to find every occurrence of this name. Sorry. Oh yeah, it's here. Yes. I have to find every occurrence. And in fact, here it seems that it's not, because I renamed it. So it's, in fact, it's just used here. I should have looked for it other way, but you understand what I mean. So it's not easy to refactor, and it's not easy to analyze. Maybe this code is not working. For example, with a notebook, you can like, you're doing your stuff. You have your, what do you have here? You have your X test, and maybe you want to compare it with something you have above. So maybe I will create a cell here just to print my X test. Okay, so here it's not working because, sorry, I didn't run the notebook, all of the notebook. But what I mean is that you can get higher in your notebook. Yeah, what did I do? Yeah, sorry. I do mistakes. Okay, so here it is. Okay, you can get back in your notebook, modify the code. Maybe it will work, but if you run your notebook again, maybe it will not work. So here it's everything's working. If I had my X test printing, it will work because in the environment it knows X test. But so it's waiting for the end of the notebook to run. But if I run it again, it will not know that it will fail because X test doesn't exist at that point. So it's kind of hard to do great code quality with that. So what this guy, Jeremy Award, is using, he agrees with that a little bit. So what he's doing is that he's using a software called NBDev, which allows him to bind his notebook with Python files. How does that work? So you have your notebook, and you're gonna put some tags at each cells to say, do I want to keep it in some Python file, or don't I want to do that? And if you want to, it will be sent to some Python file, and then maybe you can use your IDE to check the Python files, to modify it, to check it's working, to refactor it, things like that. But most of the time, Jeremy Award is still using his notebook to code. In fact, he's really a great fan of notebooks because they do some old stuff called literate programming. That means essentially that it's describing what he's doing at each step of his development with big comments. In notebooks, you can use Markdown. It's something people did in the 70s. Nowadays, like I'm more into self-documenting code. It's better to write code which is self-explaining when you can, because it's easier to refactor and not to forget to modify the comments if there is no comment. So, and if you want to, some of the code is exported, but most of the code is still in the notebook. So if you want to refactor it, it's kind of hard. As for myself, I use TDD, so I want to refactor my code a lot of time. It's hard. What I advise you to use is just some tool called Jupyter. It's kind of similar. Where it is, notebook Jupyter. So with Jupyter, Jupyter will bind all of your notebook to a Python file. So you have your notebook here. And next to it, you have a Python file here, which contains all of your code and only your code. So if you're modifying the Python file, it will modify your notebook. If you modify your notebook, okay, so that's not important. Don't worry. It will modify your Python file. And then you can use your notebook just as a big main, just to try your code, maybe do some analysis, maybe use it for monitoring. But then your code is in this Python file, and you can check it. You can see that some of your code is not used, so you can modify it easily. Maybe you're using some functions. So maybe at some point, there is this function you want to refactor, rename. You can do that. Sorry. You can do that. I have no idea, sorry, and I have time pressure, so I will call it in a really bad way. And it will be renamed in your notebook. Also, here. So this way, you still have to switch between your notebook and your IDE from time to time, but you're more into, like, you use your IDE to write high quality code, and you use your notebook to get to quickly get hints on your data, try new models, but you still get your IDE to help you maintain your notebook. You can also test your notebook if you want. You have this Python file here. You can run it if you want. And if there is some problem in your notebook, like, you can add that to your CI/CD process, and if there is some problem, you will get an error here, and so it can be, you can test your notebook if it's important for you. So that's what I advise you to do. So you can it's still useful to use notebooks, even when you have running software. You think you know your data. Maybe at some point your data will change. Maybe you will want to use some new machine learning model. Maybe you want to use your notebook to do some monitoring because it's code, so it's what you like to use. So it's kind of useful, but you should use tools such as Jupyter to help you maintain your notebook easily, to help you build some high-quality code. So here it's because my test, it ran some plots. OK, last but not least, I have 10 minutes, so there will be 5-minute questions at the end. Notebooks is a great tool just for education purposes. So for example, I do blog posts here, in French, sorry. And for my blog post, so I explore something. Here it's, I tried deep learning for time series. I tried some experiments. And in order to do that, I used Notebook, and I shared my GitHub. So people can look at my GitHub, and they can look at my Notebook and see the code. They can see the code, how I did to get all these plots, every steps I did. With GitHub, it works well to open notebooks. It's just that with Plotly for interactive plots, it doesn't work so well. So you can use other tools, such as NB Viewer here. It's easy to use, and you can have links to show your notebook. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Yep. So NB Viewer or GitHub, GitLab. It's also a great tool just to make tutorials, do training, like if you want to teach people some stuff, you can build a notebook. They can modify it, try it. So for example, you can use, if you don't want people to set up a notebook on their software, you can use Google Colab here. So on Google Colab, you can send notebooks. They can download it on their Google Drive. They can run it. And they can see what you're trying to teach them and just maybe modify it to get a hint of what is changing if you modify some parameters. And it's a great tool for for teaching. Yep. Here we are. So in that case, well, there's something I forgot to say. It's time pressure, you know. Here, if you use your notebooks next to your code, you will not, usually you just want to save your code, the code on your notebook, to be able to run it again. You're not interested into the metadata, into the output of your notebooks the last time you run it. So that's why you can use Jupyter. As we saw, it will save a Python file, and that way you can add a IPNB file to your Gitignore, and it will only save a Python file, and it will be easy to know what's changed in your notebook. Here, if you're more into trying to teach some things to somebody, but you still want to save your code on GitHub, then maybe you want to save your IPNB file, because here the output is important, because you want people to look at your GitHub account to see what you did and what you got when you did that. So it's kind of a different use case. Yeah, so that's it. So quick conclusion. So you don't have to choose between developing in a notebook, developing in an IDE. It's different use cases. IDE is great to build high-quality code with automatic tests, of course, because you can easily do a code review. You can easily check that your code is correct, that it respects code standards, that you can easily do refactoring. But if what you want to do is just some quick exploration, or if you want to have a tool to easily try stuff next to your software, you should use Notebook. But in that case, you have tools such as Jupyter to help you maintain and ensure that your notebook is high-quality code. And you can also use Notebook just as a tool to teach people, to show people what you can do in machine learning with your data, etc., etc. And that's it. So we have 5 minutes for questions. Maybe you want me to try some things. Any things? Is there any question? Yep.
Did you try using Jupyter plugin IDE?
Yeah. I mean, so in fact, there are some. You can use some special IDEs such as Spider, other stuff, to run code interactively in your IDE, or you can use even in the IDE I use, so IntelliJ, with IntelliJ Ultimate, you can have your notebook and the code of your notebook. With IntelliJ Ultimate, it's not perfect. Like when I tried it, when I did some refactoring, sometimes there were some bugs. And then, well, you got some of the advantages of notebooks. That means you can run code interactively. But then, for example, one advantage I didn't talk about is that you can run notebook from your company servers. So maybe your code is IDE sensitive. You don't want to get it on your computer. You can run notebook from afar, and you could do that, but it's more difficult with your IDE. And running in your browser, I think there are some good stuff about that. And you're not dependent about IDE. Maybe people prefer some IDE versus other IDEs. Personally, I don't like Spider. I don't remember why, but I tried it, and it's not something I liked. Does it answer your question? Yes. Yes? Is there any other question? No question. Maybe we got to get and grab a beer earlier than anticipated. Okay, thank you. So don't hesitate to come and talk to me. Maybe you're interested about Equinox, maybe you're based in France or you want to move to France. Don't hesitate to come to talk to me. We're looking for good engineers. Thank you and have a great evening.